Hello, and welcome to Rainy Tuesdays, podcast by friends for friends. I'm here with Margo.
Hi.
Ryan.
Hello.
And me, Adam.
Hi, Adam.
How's everyone doing? It's been a while.
Good.
It's been so long.
All it takes is a little bit of break for us to be thrown off track.
Yeah, completely befuddled with how to plan things. Yeah. I don't know. It's been good though. I feel like I caught up on a lot of shows to talk to you guys about, and yet none of them were Stranger Things.
You
which
still
is
haven't seen Stranger Things?
the only one
Yeah, you're not missing much.
been pushed on me by you guys.
I know Ryan doesn't like Stranger Things, but I loved that season. And regardless, I'm shocked that you have not watched it. It's like
I
the
will
most popular
eventually.
show of 2022.
It's gotta be.
It's crazy. That was wait, that was last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Welcome to
Excellent differences aside.
2023. We're here. One thing I finished was The Last of Us. That was a good transition, guys.
We might be a couple weeks old from the discussion, I suppose.
But
Oh yeah.
on
Better
another
late
hand,
than never.
were we waiting for everyone to see it so that no one can be spoiled? Because spoiler alert, we're gonna talk a lot about the
spoil it?
show. Yeah, we're
gonna
gonna spoil
talk
the
about
whole
last
show.
episode.
We're gonna talk about
Specifically.
everything. Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, maybe this episode isn't for you until you do watch it, and then consider this the 10th episode. Yep.
The official, unofficial discussion of Last of Us episode 9 and the show in general.
Just season 1 in general, yeah. Alrighty. First and foremost, should we just talk about like our overall opinions on it?
Loved it.
I really liked it.
It's very well done.
good.
I thought the show was pretty good. I felt like as it went on, it decreased in quality, but I thought it came right back up at the end.
That's fair. I think it had spikes throughout it. All of them were good, and I want to like stress that fact. The whole show was really well made. It's just that certain ones, like certain episodes, were just like a little less interesting. But not by much, I guess. I appreciated for a zombie show how few zombies were actually in it.
Yeah, that was
that
one of
made
my
me
gripes.
happy.
I was like, oh man, like we're gonna see a lot of stuff with, like zombies, and there was not. I've not seen like any of The Last of Us before.
Oh sure.
Yeah.
There. No, I was good with it because they were icky when they did show them.
And also, I don't think the show is that scary.
Oh.
No.
I disagree.
No, I agree. I think there are 2 scenes that could be considered scary, and the rest of the show was not. Well, maybe 3. 3 scenes.
I think there were a lot of things that were either scary or so icky that they made me afraid.
Yeah, it's the clicker scene in episode 2,
but also the beginning of episode 2 when they're scalpeling that woman. To test out the
I forgot.
that's
I think it was
icky.
necessarily scary. Oh, I guess icky, sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say scary though.
No, but that
Maybe
falls in the so icky I'm afraid
when she's
category.
like investigating the corpse's mouth and the fungus comes up out of it towards her. That is pretty creepy.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking,
anytime
the sinkhole
stuff came out of throats. Yeah, that was freaky. That child, terrifying.
I think that was probably the creepiest thing. But I was never like scared by the show at all.
Well, we're here to show a range of fear levels.
I guess that's true, yeah.
Yeah. If you relate to me when we're talking about other shows, this one is scary sometimes. Watch it with someone who has seen it before and can tell you when to look away. That's what I did.
I feel like scary to me means it leaves an impression and creeps me out after I've like seen the episode into the rest of my day/night, and no episode did that.
Oh, a bunch of episodes did that for me. But cool. It's a really well done show, even if you are a little fraidy cat. Yeah. And And I will say, I think this is the most manageable zombie show I've seen. Because a lot of it is like, you know, yeah, the zombies are the setting rather than like the main villain.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. I like that. Okay. Let's get into should we just skip to the last episode, or should we talk about like stuff throughout it and then just harp on the last episode? I don't know what's the better way to do this.
I guess, is there anything either of you, but more specifically Margot, have to discuss for other episodes? Because I feel like the big discussion is obviously the last one.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's what we'll do. We'll speed run the other episodes, and then we'll just mostly talk about the last one. Season 1.
Episode 1 I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, episode 1, we meet everyone. You also see like the initial outbreak from Joel's perspective, or at least his daughter's.
Which I think maybe that was like the most like, ooh, that's like the scariest part.
Terrifying.
Like, I wouldn't necessarily say terrifying, but that's something like stuck with me. I was like, oh, that is so cool.
Yeah.
Look at how fast the world evolves.
Just so speedy. Yeah. And also like the fact that the daughter, her name was Sarah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Sarah, had been over at the neighbors earlier and like seen them and talked with them, and just going back and seeing them completely murdered by grandma. Just a bummer. But I watched the like cutscene bits for both of the games because I was interested. And the thing that I noticed, because it happened in the show too, is when Joel, Tommy, and Sarah are driving away from their house, trying to get out of the city, like avoid the zombies and everything like that, they pass a family that has a kid, and Tommy's like, yo, they have a kid, and Joel's like, so do we. And I think that's like a really good foreshadowing for, I don't want to start talking about the last episode, but I think that's a really good foreshadowing for like his mindset of like protecting his child, where it's like he doesn't really care about how it affects others so long as his kid is protected.
That like die hard.
Yeah.
I'm protecting my kid to the detriment of everyone else.
Yeah.
This is what's most important to me.
Mm-hmm. Which I thought that was really interesting. I
think it's an interesting parallel too, because in between game and show, because in the game, Joel and Tommy come and get Sarah, who's in the house, and so they have already seen what's been happening, and they know that they might be infected. So that's, in the game, it seems like they're avoiding this family because they might be infected. In the show, though, Tommy comes to get them, right? And Joel doesn't know anything, and he's experiencing it first time along with Sarah, I think, right?
I think, well, Tommy got arrested, and so Joel was just picking up Tommy, but it's not really clear that they've seen like details about what's going on. Like they've just seen people going crazy, and they're just like defining it as like, oh, people are sick. They've seen like a few, I think, but not like, I don't think they know the extent of it, I guess. Yeah, but he is very much like only Tommy and Sarah are allowed in the car.
Yeah.
In both, which is very interesting. I don't know. Yeah, really well done. Sets up everything. I think my favorite part from the first episode is when we meet, or when Joel meets Ellie. Because the actor who plays Ellie, amazing. Like the way that Ellie just like throws her bag on the ground. She's just like, oh, I don't wanna. Like she's just like such a teenager, and it's so perfectly done. And I was like, I fully believe that's a teenager right there, even though I think in real life they're like 19, which is still teenaged, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like not like a 13, 14-year-old. Yeah. All right, episode 2. Okay, wait. I have a moral question for you guys.
Oh, moral question already.
Moral question. If you are in Joel and Tess's situation, right, and you find out essentially that Ellie is infected at the end of the first episode, right? Do you trust that, like, this is okay, or are you like, yo, forget this kid?
I think, given what they know about Marlene, that Marlene would not have just given them an infected kid for no reason.
Right. Yeah.
So I think I would trust Ellie in that she's not infectious. Because of my and Joel and Tessa's experience with Marlene.
Yeah. Okay. I would also think that too, because like she shows her like her scar and it's like healed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it'd be a little wary. Like I think I would be like, okay, like you're gonna like mostly walk in front of me just in case this doesn't keep going well. Just to be safe. But yeah, I do think overall I would trust. Okay. Episode 2. Lots of creepy little zombies, the clickers, which I now know the name of.
Yep.
And Tess gets bit. Are you guys the type that would not tell your fellow mates if you got bit? Because as much as we all love Tess, that's what she did.
This is my gripe with zombie shows.
Okay.
In general, is that everyone does this.
Yeah.
Like in Community, they even make fun of it. Of like,
yeah.
I got bit 10 minutes ago.
I'm special. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be like, well, darn guys.
Yeah.
It's over for me. And then I'd probably shoot myself.
Okay, sure.
Like in episode, I don't know if we're going to go every single episode, but whatever. In episode 7 with Ellie and Riley, they like Riley says immediately, like, yeah,
we could just do this. Yeah,
I got bit and you got bit, so oh no. But yeah, Tess hides it.
Yeah,
I don't know,
and like
I don't like how common that is in zombie shows.
Well, like to be fair, I do think it's an accurate reflection of how like selfish human beings are. Like inherently, I do think that would be a likely scenario if zombies were real, that a lot of people would hide it. But
and I do think taking the opposite side, that Tess very much is like, well, I know that Ellie is the cure, so I want to see this through and give her to the Fireflies.
Yeah.
So I know I fulfilled something before I end it or whatever.
Or maybe she's thinking like maybe they can make the cure fast enough, kind of thing, or like maybe it would reverse like things, you know, maybe it doesn't have to be like before you turn, maybe it could even be after you turn, kind of thing. Like I'm sure she has like some amount of hope involved.
Yeah.
But
I was just thinking because she didn't reveal it until they found out the Fireflies were dead.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, well, now this is going to happen, but I can still help out. This is end the road for me, but it doesn't have to be for you.
That's fair. Yeah, it's a very non-selfish view of it. I don't know. Ryan, would you hide it?
I would not, no.
Fair. I don't even think I would make it long enough. I don't think a zombie would get me. I think I would like off myself before I even interacted. Like
as soon as an apocalypse happens, I know I am not surviving.
I'm surviving.
You know, I do think you're the most likely out of the three of us. Like you're the most like savvy with like survival tactics
and have like useful skills.
Yeah.
Adam
and I can read. Adam and I can critically think. But
what's that gonna get for me? I'm gonna be murdered by the fascist military dictatorship because I'm critically thinking.
It's not even gonna be like a fun way to die. It's just gonna be like she thinks too much. All right, episode 3, the gay episode. One of them.
I thought it was my favorite.
Yeah,
I think it's my favorite as well. I said it at the time that I think it's one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen, and I stand by that.
I sobbed. Yeah, that one, it's so well done. An interesting debate off of it. Frank right?
Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna call him Fred. So I'm glad I went with Frank. I'm bad at names. Frank died of like presumably like Parkinson's or something, right? Like some sort of like muscle thing, I guess. But an interesting thing that I have seen around is that has resonated with a lot of people about the AIDS crisis. In the way that like loved ones would have to like watch each other die and everything, and like, you know, progressively get worse. And it's real interesting. There's been a very, very cool discussion around that that I highly recommend people look into.
I was thinking, because they leave it kind of ambiguous as to what disease is going to kill him. But he does mention that, because Bill's like, well, maybe some doctor will come along. And Frank's like, well, it wasn't curable before the apocalypse, so there's no way it's curable now. So, which it might be AIDS that he's...
Well, like, if it was AIDS, then Bill would also have it. But, like, it's... It was just because of a lot of the language around it, because of a lot of, like, the actions that they took, it did resonate with that way for a lot of people, and I love that. I think it's really cool, because it's also not like a shitty representation of that. Like, it's actually like a very loving and kind viewpoint, which is cool. Anyway, episode 4, kind of boring, right?
Kind of boring. Episode 4 is critical for
episode 5
tragedy that is episode 5.
So here's the thing.
Episode 4 is where it starts to go downhill. Like episodes 1, 2, and 3, consistent like peak television.
Fascinating.
And then from there, we're going into like okay television.
We take a dip for me for episode 4 just because it is so much set up for episode 5, which I love because episode 5 is wonderful, but only like half of episode 4 is actually relevant for episode 5. So the other half I was just like, I don't care.
I mean, it's a lot of good Ellie and Joel relationship developing that becomes critical for the show at large.
Okay, let's talk about revenge killing, because that's a big thing for episode 4 and 5, is that lady being like, he sold out my brother, so I'm gonna hunt him down, no matter what anyone else is doing.
Foreshadowing for Last of Us Part 2.
But yeah, like, I don't like her. Like, get over it. I'm sorry.
The soccer mom dictator lady?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God. And she does have, like, that Professor Umbridge type creepiness where, like, she has a very sweet voice. And then she'll be saying, like, the nastiest stuff. And she'll just be like, come on, sweetie. Like, let me kill you.
Yeah.
I also don't understand why she shot the doctor.
Yeah, that was a little rude.
Yeah. That like...
Because he helped them out. Like...
He helped them, and he's a doctor. Like, don't you
could have been helpful.
Doctors?
Yeah.
Same with Joel.
Crucial skill.
I don't know why he shot the doctor at the end.
Another foreshadowing. I mean, doctors die.
The doctor you've just watched the game Cinemax, so I don't remember if it's the same. But at least the doctor in the show is seemingly about to threaten him with a knife, and he's like, "We're not doing that."
Yeah,
but I don't think that happens in the game, does it?
Well, he goes back to grab it, and he shoots him before he even gets it. But
I couldn't remember because I felt like it was more brutal in the game.
Yeah, it was because his back was turned. Like he was not a threat yet. But anyway, yeah, she kills a doctor. She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get him," but then she's also like presumably gonna kill Sam, who is the sweetest kid in all of television, and I love him. Yeah. Kind of rude. I don't like her. I don't think that's a hot take, though. Episode 5.
Devastating.
Oh. My heart just broke. Yeah. It's a real bummer. But yeah, just we've talked about it before, just how the last 20 minutes are just like just every saddest possible option.
Yeah. Also, I think some of the creepiest scenes, well, hard to say creepy scenes with episode 8, but the child clicker is one of the creepiest monsters.
That was really cool.
So that was like real, right? Like that child was an actual Bidney person.
Contortionist. Yeah. Because she moves so... It's all movement.
Yeah.
And it was so bizarrely that just really, really freaky. And the like, I think it really captures the like reckless abandon of this zombie is going to get that human no matter what is in its way.
Yeah.
In the car when she's like throwing herself over the seats, and it's very clumsy and weird.
Yeah.
To get to Ellie.
Yeah. Well, because it's like not a human anymore at that point. It's creepy.
But then it viciously murders the lady. So
fine. Yeah, so we like that child zombie.
And respect to the actress.
Oh yeah, no, she's amazing. I hope her bendiness is fun for her. I don't know what you wish people who are bendy other than joyful bendiness. I think that episode was also just so heartbreaking because it had a lot of like watching your loved ones go through turmoil. Because you had Joel like watching the 3 kids like try to get away from all of this, you had obviously Sam at the end and everyone seeing him turn, and then like Henry, but then also Joel like watching Ellie at the very end when she's apologizing. Like it's heartbreaking. I don't know.
I think it's a lot more foreshadowing too of like this story of Henry and Sam is how Joel and Ellie could have turned out had things been different.
Yeah.
Because it's the exact same thing of like Henry would do anything for Sam. He has done anything for Sam to the detriment of everyone else.
Yeah.
And once he loses Sam, there's nothing for him left.
Absolutely.
Definitely a parallel there.
Yeah. It's also so impressive how much those 2 characters were developed in like an episode and a quarter. Like they were at the very last end of episode 4. But yeah. Beautiful. Love it. Okay, 6. Don't remember it. Kind of boring.
A slower
one.
The
commune.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I think in a single scene it has done more to fight anti-communist propaganda in the US than anything else.
100%. They seem to be thriving. I love that they teach her about periods. That's always a question I have with post-apocalyptic worlds. I'm like, these women are getting their periods. What is going on here? So
although,
I love that that's
in episode 3, she grabs tampons from the convenience store. So
yeah, that's fair. Earlier too. Yeah, it's a good time. I appreciate that about them. Okay, and then you get stabbed at the end of it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Bummer. I know that they would exist were our world to go into this world, right? But I just think raiders or like hunters or whatever they're calling themselves are dumb.
That was my thought, because like this is like 20 years since that's gone on. Like, surely haven't all of them like fought each other or at least
you like get your stuff together? Like,
wouldn't there just be like one giant raider group then?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Surely there would have been fighting between the raider groups.
100%.
That was my thought. That also took me out of it.
No, there would have been like a bunch of like groups, and like some of them being like raider groups, some of them being like like the communist group, like some of them being like the QZ type thing. Fedra. That's what that's called.
In defense, I guess the United States is very large and it's like
so big.
Clearly, as they're traversing, different people have occupied different regions. And in Last of Us Part 2, there are 2 factions that are fighting each other, which is kind of part of the plot of the game.
Yeah.
So I think like where they intersect, they conflict, but we're mostly seeing people who are kind of isolated and are the only humans left in that region.
So like, what are you raiding at that point? If you're staying in a group, can you really call yourself raiders?
I also feel like
raided everything.
I mean, I could, because we find out that these guys that attacked Joel
they're actually
were the same guys as the cult group.
So I guess they're not like raiders.
They're not really raiders, but they're also really desperate. They don't have any food.
Yeah.
And maybe they just saw that the Fireflies left this.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, maybe the Fireflies left something behind.
That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I
still don't like them.
I feel like America would probably be better off if this were like really to happen, especially 20 years after. Rural America, there's like no one there. They're not have to worry about zombies, and they have lots of guns. They would all be thriving.
I think like, what's it called? Jackson in the town that the commune in Wyoming is probably what would happen all over the Midwest. Of like, this is nothingness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're telling me in North Dakota there's zombies everywhere? No.
And that's my other thing. I feel like most of the zombies would have died out in 20 years.
Yeah. Well, like,
I think the fungus artificially sustains them somehow.
Ooh.
Because I don't know if this is explained in the game.
I thought in the show but I think like 6 months, because there was like the one that was like stuck to the wall.
Right. Yeah, but then those spores like go and get other things.
Well,
so I don't know.
So there's like a couple differences between game and show. Of like in the game, there's the spores thing. They don't do that in the show though. They do like the hive mind thing instead. But I think in the game, at least, they establish that somebody has to kill the zombies, otherwise they'll live forever and they'll get progressively more and more mutated, which is why there's the big giant bloaters. Because that's just sense. After it's been alive for so long, they become those things.
It wasn't just some big guy. Fair enough.
But that obviously things can happen because they're not intelligent. So like the zombie that Ellie kills in episode 2 episode 3 in the convenience store.
I hated that scene too.
Of like it's trapped under rubble.
Yeah.
So
probably would have stayed there forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, episode 7's the next gay episode. A delight. A lot of good acting. A lot of good suspense.
I was gonna say this was my least favorite episode.
That's fair. I think it had happened. It was a plot we already essentially knew the end of. Like we knew that she gets bit in the mall, right? Like I guess we didn't know that her friend also got bit, right? Mm-hmm. But as soon as you see her friends there, you're like, well, I mean, her friend's not been around.
I wish it was
and
just
she
like
said everyone leaves or
yeah.
And Marlene mentions Riley at the very beginning too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's just like I've seen some people comparing it to Stranger Things. I think it was season 2 where they like focused on all the other like 11s.
It does feel like that, where it's like the show like,
puts a pause.
You're in like the climax of things happening, and we just take an
Stop.
episode to go do something else with characters you don't care about. And it's also like it's not an interesting story either.
Yeah, it's just like it's a cute little character development thing for Ellie. But
I didn't even really feel like it was that.
Okay, I did.
I did. I really liked it. I like that episode. There wasn't a single episode I didn't like, but I like this episode because of that. I thought it was very good character development for Ellie. Saw a lot of her background and like kind of this theme of establishing who the characters are for Joel and Ellie and what drives them. And that this is very much establishing like Ellie's never had anyone and everyone she's lost, which you've talked about that again later, but now you've seen it and like her kind of depression that she develops and sense of like, well, what is my life for? If this is all I'm here for, so I'm going to do something about this.
Okay. There's also world building too with like what it is, like what the school in the QZ is like for kids and everything like that.
Yeah, and like how Fedra governs.
Better. They really stopped with a lot of the world building very early on. Like after episode 3, we stopped getting those like
little asides,
little, like asides at the start. Those were really cool.
Like, I loved them. Like, they were fascinating.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think episode 3 had so much of that. Like Joel explaining how it started in like bread. The scene where we cut back to show the military taking all of the people from the scene of the corpses, so they just murdered them all.
Oh, yeah.
And Joel's comments about the bombs in episode 2. Yeah. Yeah, I wish we had more of that throughout.
Fair.
We got that some in 4 and 5 of how they'd overthrown Fedra, but
like a little, it's once definitely not as much.
In the wilderness, you get less. But at the same time, like you mentioned, this is a lot of nothing in Wyoming.
What's the world building in Wyoming?
Where are you in Kansas City to Wyoming? What are you going through?
It looks a little different. Like there's a few more trees. Like, I don't know. Yeah. So I liked it as an episode on its own, but I guess I just was like bummed about the placement in the story, if that makes sense, just because it did distract from like the whole like, oh god, I hope Joel's okay. But yeah,
I don't know, I could have done without it.
Fair.
I feel like if it didn't exist, I would have been like, yeah,
season. Fair.
I mean, it essentially would have been the same show. But I think it adds a little extra, but nothing like vital, if that makes sense.
I don't think it takes anything away. It just didn't add anything for me. Like, maybe if it was earlier in the season.
Sure. I could see that, yeah.
We don't know Ellie as much. But at that point, like, we already know Ellie.
Yeah.
So.
Like, she's already had her line about everyone leaving. So.
It's kind of the weird thing of, like, constantly going back to the game, but in the game it's just this is the DLC, so it is a wholly separate backstory that you didn't experience as part of the original game, so it wasn't important to the game story because it wasn't there, and it was just like, oh, if you cared, here's some more stuff if you're interested, and that's kind of hard to slot into the show.
Definitely.
As something that is critical when it wasn't critical for the game.
Yeah, I think that's super fair. 8 hated it.
I thought 8 was really good. A very horrifying episode for sure.
Horrifying. My biggest complaint, and this is nothing against The Last of Us in general, it's just that like I really despise the fact that the only trauma that like women in action things can seem to face is like sexual trauma. I wish that wasn't such a trope. Because like the cannibalism, horrifying enough on its own, like almost getting eaten, I feel like would give a person PTSD. To like add in that he's also like, now let me like
trying to groom
fight
her
you and like, yeah, I'm like,
he doesn't try to rape her until the end. But he is trying to groom her in the cell.
He's totally trying to groom her, and like, sure, you could have that. I could give or take without that. That's still creepy. And then the cannibalism thing is like a reaction to her not wanting to be groomed, essentially. Fine, okay, creepy, horrifying. I'm like already at my max level of like, you don't need to creep me out anymore. I think this dude's bad. And so like adding on top of that then he tries to like assault her, sucks. And I just wish it wasn't a trope. But
you can correct me if I'm wrong again, since you just watched the game. But I don't think the pedophile aspect of David is in the games.
So it was. But this was an interesting thing, actually. It was definitely in there. He like pins her down face down on the ground, and then he turns her over and like starts to get into things. But like people playing it didn't read it. Or I should correct that. A lot of men who played it did not read that as assault. And so the creator, he was like, I wanted to make that more overt, because a lot of people didn't read it in that way. And I was like, it seemed pretty obvious looking at the cutscene what was going on.
I mean, maybe I was oblivious when I played it, or it's been so long. I don't know. But I did not remember that being part of it. So
yeah, it was just icky, but I just wish it wasn't like a thing.
I think it's an interesting comparison between Jackson and what they're doing as a community versus this community, and that probably all of its problems are because they have this charismatic pedophile cult leader who's moving them across country, and because he talks about like they keep having to move, and then I think it's kind of insinuated that they probably keep having to move because he keeps raping girls. So.
Probably, yeah. Ray Wilson tweeted. Okay.
Again, it's been 20 years and these people haven't died off. They're all constantly scrounging for food and haven't settled down. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. If you think about how much food the US has and waste, and how much like would last preservative wise, and how many people die right off the start, I think that you could scavenge for a long time.
Yeah. And farm.
And farm. If you like settle down. But you have to settle down to do that.
But they could have, like you said, they keep getting uprooted in David's words, so whether it's his fault or someone else's, who's to say? But
so Rainn Wilson tweeted that Christians were being persecuted in media. And this was like a prime example of it.
Did he really?
Yeah. Thoughts?
Sorry to Christians out there. Some Christians really have a persecution complex. I think it's pretty obvious that David does not care at all about
Yeah, he literally says that.
And it is just his tool to control these people.
He literally says he wasn't a Christian until he found out it could benefit him, like in this post-apocalyptic world. I don't think anyone.
I don't think this is a commentary on hey, Christians are bad.
Yeah.
Except in the sense of like other things, it's a power structure that can be exploited with people who want to prey upon more susceptible members of the population, which is very common among religious.
Absolutely. But not just Christianity. Yeah.
But not just Christianity.
Yeah. I don't know. Ryan, do you have any thoughts on that? On the cult guy?
I sort of agree. I sort of disagree.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's interesting. All right. Episode 9, the big one.
The big one.
A very good episode. This is where we come back into like peak TV.
That's fair.
I think it has. I think
phenomenal.
I think it's tough because I feel like it should have been longer. It feels very short for a finale episode, but I also don't know what else I would have added.
Yeah.
Every scene is meaningful, and I don't really know how you could have prolonged it. But at the same time, it just feels really short. Like I remember being like, this is the episode. It's like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I think it might be the shortest episode of the season. Don't quote me on that.
I think 8 was.
I was going to say, I feel like 4 was really short.
Yeah. I don't know. They really sprinkled a bunch of them in.
That's okay. I don't know. This is my critique. Like, streaming is great because, like, when you used to have, like, broadcast TV, everything had to be either, like, 50 minutes or 23 minutes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can sort of make it whatever and tell your own side story. But, like, it's so inconsistent sometimes.
That's true. And at some point, it did sort of feel like after a couple short episodes, they would make up for it with a really long one. And it was like, oh, that's interesting. I don't know, just timing-wise. But I do kind of like it. I feel like it's nice.
First episode was an hour and 20. Third episode was an hour and 15. The fourth episode was the shortest at 45.
Okay. Fair.
It's just so weird of like
the
differences. Mandalorian does this too. Mandalorian
show.
Big time.
Amazing. But like
last just randomly have like a 20-minute episode.
33 minutes. And then everything else is like 15 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. I don't know. Pick a time and stay around there.
Yeah. Like a general vibe. So I have a few, like, obviously there's the big moral question, which we talked a little bit about before the podcast.
Although we can reiterate a lot of what we said. Yeah. I feel like it's like the big decision of, do you agree with Joel or not? And obviously it's more complicated than that. And I think a lot of people understand why Joel did what he did. I do, at least. Sure. I don't know if I would have done the same. And I've talked about this of like, in the game, I was not happy with being forced to make that decision because I didn't want to be doing it. And he kind of brutally kills a lot of people in both. And I was like, I don't think I want to brutally kill all these people. Seems like we don't have to do that. But I wasn't given the option. But it's hard. Like, you're sacrificing the possible salvation of the world just for yourself.
Yes. I definitely like think it's an interesting commentary on like taking away Ellie's like free will. Like on every party's side.
Yeah.
They don't care about like what she could possibly want as a person.
Because we've talked about this again before. So just to reiterate for our viewers, like I think that is the big thing. If no one tells Ellie, like that's the Firefly's big problem. If Ellie probably would have agreed to this, although there's complications of she's clearly very depressed, doesn't have any self-worth. Yeah, and a child. does her yes mean anything, even if she were asked? But
right.
regardless, she should have.
Yeah.
Marlene should have asked. But then Joel doesn't ask either, and he doesn't tell her that he had done this and lies about what had happened.
Completely. Do you think that, like, on Marlene's side, what all did she, like, do you think her breaking the promise to Ellie's mom of, like, keeping Ellie safe, like, protecting her and everything?
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Like, thoughts on that? Like, is it worth it for potential salvation, or is that, like, promise more important? Like,
it seemed pretty reckless that they were like, hey, we don't know if this is gonna work, but
right,
we're gonna try it anyway.
But we're gonna kill the only hope, and not that anyone knows this, but almost unreplicatable circumstance that made her immune.
Yeah,
almost. So, like, on top of that, no one knows that that's how it's happened. This is the only person you know with this ability. Maybe don't just kill them on the hope that you could develop a cure.
Right. I also just don't understand why they would even have to kill her. Like, could they not have, like, taken blood and tried things with that first?
Yeah,
could they not have, like,
experiments,
like, done scans or anything on how it might react to certain things? I don't know. Like, it really feels like their first reaction was, let's kill her and see what happens, you know? Like,
yeah,
it just doesn't.
And there's a lot of like beyond that of distribution. Even if they were possibly successful, does this
like,
mean
is a terrorist
anything?
group. Yeah,
this is a terrorist group that pretty much no one likes, and they don't control any of the world. How are they going to get this to everyone else?
Yeah.
And even if they were, would that matter? We see from, like, the clickers and the bloaters that they just murder people anyways. They're not really about trying to infect. So
yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
When you have rampaging zombies that you can't kill, you can't even shoot with the bloater, like, a cure's not going to save you and rip your head off.
Yeah.
And the humans are killing each other, so
oh my god, all the time. The real monster. No, but I also wanted to ask, because in this episode Joel's like, hey, I tried to kill myself after my daughter died, but the only point that, like, healed that wound was when I met you, to Ellie, right? I thought about that line a lot, and I'm wondering what you guys think the line is between, like, companionship and codependency, you know? Like, at what point is it, like, blurred?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Because is that a fair thing for him to say? That, like,
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think so too. I mean, it's not putting any pressure on Ellie in that moment. It's just acknowledgement of how much she's done for him, even if it wasn't intentional on her part. But I think it becomes codependency on Joel's sense, maybe, in that he does then sacrifice the world for Ellie.
Yeah, and, like, he
can't experience losing on another daughter, essentially.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just, like, really, really interesting to me, because, like, it's kind of sweet to be like, hey, like, you're the first person who's made me glad I didn't succeed at that, you know? But at the same time, I do feel like that's a lot of pressure to put on a, like, teenager's shoulders.
14-year-old kid.
Yeah. To say, like, hey, like, you're the only reason that I'm happy I'm alive right now. Is a bit of a bummer.
A big burden to put on someone who does not know how to handle that.
Right. Who, like, can barely handle her own emotions.
Yeah.
Like, let alone a grown man's. Yeah, I think it's a lot. But obviously coming from a sweet place, I don't know. It was cool. It was a really well done episode. I like the giraffes. Yes. I like that they were real giraffes.
Yeah.
The giraffes was my real. Yeah. They did not look real somehow in the moment. My girlfriend and I had a debate. I was like, But she's like, "Do you think those are real?" I was like, "No, those are CGI for a fact." And
no,
I feel like I don't know this whole like, oh, does it look real versus it CGI? People can't tell anymore.
I can't
clearly.
And I feel like it's like, oh, look, bad CGI is a horrible excuse for stuff.
People just like saying it.
Yeah, where they have no other criticism.
Yeah. They're like, I want to hate
silly.
Something about this.
Yeah. And it's like, even still, like, if it looks bad, that's not necessarily an issue. Like,
no.
Can you suspend your disbelief of like, oh, I see what they were going for?
Like, can you still watch Star Wars? Like, there's some fun stuff in there. Can you still watch any movie from the 90s? There's plenty of fun stuff in there.
The
if
first
you rewatch,
Harry Potter movie, great movie.
Yeah.
CGI,
horrible.
Bad.
If you rewatch The Phantom Menace, that CGI has not aged well at all. But you know what? The movie is still
a blast.
Sometimes entertaining. Other times, holy cow, those prequel movies drag on too long.
If you watch them with people so you can talk during the boring parts, they are so fun.
But if you're a kid who had them recorded and could just fast forward through the parts that he was bored with, as was my experience, they're the best.
Exactly.
The best movies
Episode
ever.
2 was my favorite movie as a kid. Because I was like, you know what, that clone scene at the end is awesome. I'm just gonna
That's all I would watch.
I mean, frankly, I don't know. I'm excited because the Dungeons and Dragons movie, when this episode is out, will have just come out. And I'm so excited for it, but I know full well that there's the potential for some stupid Dungeons and Dragons creature to look kind of wonky. I'm sure of it. Like,
I heard very not good things about it, but
I think it'll be a blast.
Hopefully, it's no Willow.
Sure. Which I did rewatch the movie.
It was very good.
Exciting. I'm starting the series.
I can't wait for season 2.
There. A good time. Yeah. Alrighty. What rained on y'all's parades?
Alright. Right off the bat, the Illinois state government rained on my parade.
The whole state government.
JB's raining on your parade.
It is tax season.
Oh, yeah.
Went through my taxes. I owe the Illinois state government $600.
I'm so sorry.
It's just rough. It's rough out here.
Yeah.
Apparently, I have now reached the age where I can no longer be claimed as part of my parent, which means it's all on me. And I was lucky enough to get a very fortunate scholarship for my law school, which, lo and behold, has tax consequences on me. And now I owe taxes. And Illinois has some system that other states don't have. They have like a lower threshold with which that starts triggering certain tax consequences. So if I had filed in a different state, I would owe less because it wouldn't trigger it until later. Lots of things.
I'm so sorry.
It's rough. It was rougher when we were going through. We had just done like federal first.
Yeah.
And the federal was like looking great. They were going to give me $130. This is so great. I'm going to make so much money. And then it was like, oh, we lied to you. Actually, you owe us $30. I was like, well, whatever. That's fine. Then we did the state and we put in like, all right, transfer all that stuff over state. And it's like, you owe $1,000. Like, Jesus Christ, I'm ruined. But then various things deducted and but still lots. We prefer not to owe JV Pritzker that much money.
Yeah. I got moved up a tax bracket because I have a similar situation. So all my tuition I don't really pay for. However, it's viewed as income.
Mm-hmm.
And so tuition at the school is very expensive. And so it's like, wow, I'm making all this income. And it's like, I'm not seeing a single penny of it. I'm just getting it up in here in my mind.
So they treat it as if you're making the like 40,000 a year or whatever.
Yo, Illinois is kind of bogus.
Yikes!
Well, that's just sort of how like tuition remission works. But
sure,
yeah.
I mean,
silly.
It shouldn't.
kind of goofy.
See any of that?
I don't know how Illinois does their taxes. They always get money because when I was like in Texas over the summer, there's no income tax there, but I was still paying Illinois tax. And then at the end, they're like, "Hey, you still need to pay us a little bit more." I was like, I thought our transaction had ended. I thought I already paid you everything.
I thought we finished this. Oh man, that is wild. I don't know. I can't say I relate.
I support future President JB. He can get all my money.
Now he'll get the whole country's money.
JB Pritzker removed bathrooms from his estate so it didn't count as a livable residence, and he didn't have to pay taxes on it for president.
Mm-hmm. That's the only one thing he ever did.
Yeah, and he paid the taxes later.
Okay.
When he got found out. But I think it's a funny
coward.
Story.
It is funny.
Should have stuck with it.
The Great Con.
Yeah.
Not as bad as the mayor of Chicago. So
yeah.
Fine.
Well, people call him the Great Con, one for that, and then two because people think he's the next Genghis Khan.
That's a claim.
There's a whole internet subgroup about it.
Honestly, high praise for what is, in my mind, a fine governor.
Exactly.
Not great, but not bad. I mean, it's a pretty low bar for Illinois.
Exactly, which I think is what makes the joke so much better, because he's just a guy, and I don't know, he's
just a guy who
governor,
has the one scandal that he fixed. So,
but people Photoshop him riding on horseback, that he's gonna take over all the other states to expand Illinois' border and stuff.
Honestly, I'm for it. Let's take over Missouri.
Warriors for Pritzker.
The country of Illinois.
Missouri is falling apart. It would be better under Illinois.
They're a little funky down there.
Take Iowa too. There's nothing here that's relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're there.
Not for long.
And we just come back to Illinois then.
Yeah, that's true. I guess you're going back to Illinois anyway. Fair. I'll do a happy one and a thankful one of I entered into a little short film contest, which was very exciting, and both of my co-hosts here did a little voice acting for it, which was very kind, and I appreciate it. And it was sweet.
Find me in a cameo appearance.
Both of them credited voice actors.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course.
Ooh,
wow.
On my resume.
Yeah. I'm not gonna do shit and not credit you. But yeah, a wonderful time. Very scary, but also it doesn't really matter. It was just fun to do, and I think that's the point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For me, I don't know if this is sad or happy, but I think the end of Twitter is in sight.
Yeah.
The announcement of only verified users are going to show up on the
For You page. I
don't
know how. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So there's two. So there's two pages. So back in November, Elon is Twitter is censoring what you see, and so they added a following page. And the following page is only people you follow in chronological order. So if you follow anyone that's news, AP News or anything, you're just going to get
all you see.
20 AP Newses in a row because they're constantly putting stuff out. And that's not the optimal way to view stuff. And so if that's the only way you can really view, it's going to be so bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's probably the final straw for me, and I just need to stop using Twitter. Twitter has also just been one, it runs so poorly now. And
it's awful. The user interface of it is bad now.
Yeah. And everyone's just so self-righteous on there. It's I don't care. Y'all are getting upset over the smallest things and blowing things out of proportion. They'll see a news story and draw their own conclusions from it, and then there's developments, and it's y'all just blew stuff up for nothing. It's
right.
I don't know.
And
it's very silly.
that they're only commenting on the headline, they didn't read it.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And so I have now added you can set limits on your phone for time duration. So I've done hour limits for Twitter.
Sure.
And I really like it.
There.
I'm I use Twitter too much because I looked at my battery the other day. It's 37% of my battery was used on Twitter, which is why is it using that much of my battery?
Oh man, I think it uses some like background stuff too. Like I think a lot of them do that. What are your backup social medias? Or are you going off?
I don't know. Maybe TikTok.
Reddit, if it counts. TikTok.
Maybe
sure,
Reddit.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go back to Reddit. I like
Sure.
swore off Reddit 2 years ago, and I've not really missed it at all. Every now and then I get on there for like movie and TV show discussions, but that's it.
Right.
Instagram is awful. I hate it so much. It's the worst. Snapchat's awful.
I love it to talk
Still
to people.
fundamentally do not think Snapchat counts as social media. We've had this discussion.
Exactly.
But yes, Snapchat's awful as well.
Yeah.
I don't
only
know.
use the talking tab.
I think it's the death of Twitter is interesting because there's not an obvious successor.
Backup. Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to some people about like after like graduating, they're like, I want to delete Snapchat. It's like, what do I need it for? I was like, I want to do that too. What do I need Snapchat for?
There. Yeah. We can talk anywhere else. Yeah.
As texting. Could easily do texting elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I think it's like a cute thing to like talk to people, sure, but like the majority of my Snapchat usage is saving pictures for memories kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is nice. But I like don't care about people's stories. I don't care about whatever Discover
Instagram stories. The worst. Ooh, I don't care.
Yeah. I'll like repost stuff from either like here or like my art Instagram. And I feel a little guilty sometimes because like I don't actually look at that many other people's stories. And so I'm kind of like asking people to do something that I don't do, which makes me feel a little bad. But I'm like, oh well, if they want to.
Yeah, I used to look at Instagram stories, and then I realized it was like a task that I would just click as fast as possible to get through them all, and I didn't care what I was looking at. And I'm like, why did I do this?
Yeah,
so I stopped.
That's fair. Yeah. I think like there's maybe 10 people whose stories that I will look at. And actually, Adam, your girlfriend is one of them because she always posts like cute little drawings. And I'm like, oh, that's a cute little drawing.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
It's usually a cute little drawing or some feat of
some like workout thing. And I'm like, oh my God, go her. Yeah. A whole time. But bummer about Twitter.
I don't know. I can't decide. I was like, I think April 15th I'll just like delete the app and be like, yeah, that's it. I don't need it.
No.
I'm sort of looking forward to it.
Okay.
Because every day I get on Twitter, I was like, man, this is great. And I also am like, man, these people suck.
Yeah. Okay, well, fuck Twitter. Fuck Elon Musk. And fuck that cult guy in Last of Us episode 8. And The Last of Us was really good.
Yeah. Now that we spoiled the whole thing, you should go and watch it if you
haven't seen it, or if you want to rewatch it and then tell us how wrong we were about everything.
Or you heard we started talking about Last of Us and didn't listen to this episode at all.
Yeah. Why are you here? At this point. Okay, have a sunny Wednesday.
Bye.
Bye.